Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. Join me as we have a real-life discussion on how to change your life by changing your thoughts. Remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth. Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. My name is Sloan Fremont, and I'm your host. This is a show where we talk about how to change our lives by changing our thoughts. And every week I bring you a new guest, or sometimes it's just me offering up my own stories or perspectives. And really what we talk about every week on this show is just what I said in the intro, how to change our thoughts, and which will in turn change our lives. And this week, our topic is Transcendental Meditation. My guest is Jim Meade, and he's the author of a new book on Transcendental Meditation. And we're going to get into all of that today. But before we do, I wanted to just let you know on this topic of TM, I know nothing about this. I actually came into this interview as a complete beginner. I didn't do any research on it. I was really just wanting to approach this with genuine curiosity, which is what I did. So I think you're going to find this interview not only fascinating, but actually you're going to get to the end of this and be like, okay, yes, this is something I can take away from this interview and actually do something about. So stay tuned. We've got a great interview ahead, and I really hope that you enjoy it. Today, I want to welcome Jim Meade to the show. His new book is called End Anxiety: Proven Benefits of the Transcendental Meditation Program. We all know we're living in troubling times, and with it comes a host of mental health concerns, notably depression, stress, and anxiety. We may not be able to change the world, but Jim's newest book shows us how we can help ourselves. The problem is real, and Jim offers an instant and lasting solution. And Jim, I want to welcome you to the Create What You Speak podcast.
Thank you so much.
So let's start out telling the audience just a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, great. So again, thank you for having me. And I'm a transcendental meditation teacher. There's a story even in that may come up because it's not entirely by choice, but I feel like life brought me into doing that. And I teach with my wife, and we've taught together a couple thousand people. And I know that change is a big theme of this website. So I'll just mention a few places that we've taught: Alaska, Los Angeles, Hawaii, Hong Kong, Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, and Nepal, and Jamaica. And often we were in residence there for a couple, 3-4 months, even longer. So I'm a transcendental meditation teacher. I have a Ph.D. in English from Northwestern University, so there's my credibility. I was quite a serious student, but change came, and I became much more independent. And I was a founding professor at Maharishi International University. And then I became a full-time writer, and I have written 35 books, of which this is number 35.
Wow, amazing. So there's so many ways I want to go with this, but let's start out talking about what transcendental meditation is and maybe what it isn't. And then I want to get into your story of change and how this went for you. Beautiful.
So transcendental meditation is a simple, natural, effortless mental technique for diving inside. And, probably William Wordsworth said it best, the 19th century poet, because people occasionally spontaneously had this experience, and that he said, "I fell asleep in body and became a living soul." And this is a technique where we instantly have that experience. People never believe me when I say this, and then when I've instructed them, they always believe me.
Right.
So it's an instant connecting inside, and it's what it's not is what you think of. If you haven't learned it, what you think of as meditation. It's not sitting with your back straight and concentrating on your breath. It's not listening to a podcast where someone guides you into a peaceful state. It is this experience of connecting with the infinite, which is you.
Interesting. Yes. And this is something I am not at all familiar with. So I've meditated. I've used the guided meditations very frequently. So transcendental meditation, you were there in the mid 60s when we were undergoing, such a change in the world, and there was a real surge in the TM movement. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience? And maybe we could talk about change and how it sounds like transcendental meditation picked you up and carried you and you accepted the kind of that path to go on. So can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, that's a perfect description of it, and so the 60s was when the Beatles started, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
very famous course in 1968 in India where the Beatles were there, Mia Farrow was there, other famous musicians and performers, and Mike Love of the Beach Boys, and that's where the wave of publicity came. The
Mm-hmm.
biggest wave of starting TM came in the 70s, and I was definitely there for all of that. And that is, Maharshi appeared on a show, The Merv Griffin Show. TV was different then. There weren't
Yeah.
5,000 cable channels, so everybody watched it. And
Mm-hmm.
then they were just pouring into our TM centers like crazy. We're opening new centers. And it it seemed to me like, okay, finally people get it and everybody's doing TM. But like all good things, it went through another cycle like that. Now, as for me personally, when I was finishing my PhD at Northwestern, for which I have to credit the TM, because once I started it, I finished my dissertation in 4 months.
Wow.
But my wife said to me, if you go straight into teaching, stay on the straight and narrow, and I know you're not satisfied with it, I'll leave you. and and we've been together 54 years. So I didn't. And I actually went seeking, I wanted ultimate knowledge. I
Yeah.
wanted ultimate knowledge. And it's amazing how this actually comes to you when we go out and look for it. So I got all kinds of invitations. I got picked up on the street by some Buddhists who said, "You want to come to a meeting?" I said, "Yes." And out of all these, I went to a weekend course in Transcendental Meditation. We just taught
Mm-hmm.
one actually this weekend, and I was sold out. It's experiential. It's the experience. It's like, okay, I know what this is about. I know what life is about. I've been there. Sometimes people even describe this experience of transcending as coming home, or mother is at home. It's like I am experiencing the nature of life. So once I got launched on the TM, and then Maharshi Mahesh Yogi, who brought this to America, he
Mm-hmm.
was doing courses in person. And I went to one of them and I was just enthralled. I just I had read everything. Basically, I've read everything, all
Right.
the classics. And I was like, here it is, live and just totally solid. I mean, I just, as I listened to it, of course, I was trained to question everything,
Yeah.
but there were always answers to my questions.
So, not having experienced this myself, I'm trying to, and I guess I can't do it because I haven't experienced it, but I'm trying to
Yeah.
imagine what this would be like. So, can you give those of us who aren't familiar with it, is it an internal feeling that this brings you? Is it a clarity? Is it knowledge? Like, what are the benefits from this, and how does one, is it different for everybody, or how does it exactly work, I guess?
Okay. Yeah. Great question, actually. In a way, it's different for everybody, and in a way, it's universal.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that it's different for everybody is it really depends on the condition of our own nervous system.
Okay.
So, and that is unknowable also.
Right.
So in that sense, it's very personal. But the other thing, I was listening to somebody, I think, guess one of our teachers, who was saying, every time I have taught this technique, it has worked. And so it always works, and that is that we always take this dive inside.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we going to find? The easiest thing that we can go by to verify this isn't the subjective experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's the body. Sometimes you'll just stop breathing altogether. It's like, wait a minute, I've never done this before. I
Yeah.
have never been this relaxed. So if you learn it I'll come there and teach you. I'll send my wife. You get profoundly relaxed. Sometimes you'll have the experience of your breathing even stopping. Your
Hmm.
arms and legs feel heavy. One person said my favorite thing. She said, everything slowed down and then I disappeared.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So there it is, universal and yet
Yet
personal.
different. Yeah, yeah. And so you learn the technique, you experience this, and then what happens? What's the benefit once you come out of it? So you've experienced this, and is it a daily practice? Is it something that people do on their own? Do they have to go to someone who, a class each time, or how does that work?
That was a bunch of questions. You're
I
excited.
know. I'm very curious about this because I want to feel like that. Like I want to experience that.
Yeah.
So
And I want
I'm
you to feel like that. Um, so when you come out of it, one of the main benefits absolutely is clarity.
mm-hmm.
People just feel more clear.
Mm-hmm.
People feel calmer.
Mm-hmm.
But the theme of my book and the thing I love to report is the anxiety is gone.
Yeah.
So, and I love it. The interesting thing is the more anxious the person, the more it's gone. So,
Ah, yeah.
so when a person learns the TM, and so I had a high school student the other day, 17-year-old girl, very attractive, and what a shame that anxiety was. She's a softball player and various
Mm-hmm.
things. What a shame that the anxiety's there. And she told me she's anxious, and uh, I said, okay, here we go, to myself. And then, and she'd been anxious for weeks, months like that. After I taught her, are you still anxious? No, it's gone. And then I asked her, I saw her again after 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. It stayed gone.
Mm,
So the anxiety is gone, the calmness is there, the clarity is there. And out of all those things comes creativity. An
yeah. Yeah.
interesting paradox is that it cools us off. People expect that of meditation. You chill out. And it heats us up in the sense of our creativity goes way up, way, way up. I've written 35 books, 30, 35, not even sure anymore. Depends what you count or count
Right.
all the computer documentation that I've written and unpublished books. It's probably
Right.
50. Where does all that creativity come from? It comes from inside. And what connects me with my inside? Transcending.
I've often felt in my own experience the amount of anxiety and worry and fear that I use my internal resources on is such a waste. I could be using that on so much better things. But when we're in that state of that, it's first off, it for me, I'll only speak for myself. It felt normal. It felt like that's just the way life is for me. I have this stabbing feeling of pain in my stomach from all the anxiety, like eating me alive, it felt like, right? And so
Wow.
what you're saying there with the creativity and being able to free up that space, like free up that mental space and that energetic space within us
Yes.
is, I mean, again, I'm not going to speak. I'll speak for myself. That is what, like, I feel like I've spent a big chunk of my life looking for. Right? How do I do this? How do I ease my own suffering,
Right.
my own internal suffering? And it sounds like what you're saying, as I said in the intro, this is an instant and lasting solution.
It's instant and lasting. I mean, we have to do it twice a day. If we don't, then the anxiety comes back. But if we
Yeah.
do it twice a day and it's only 20 minutes, and I want to mention a part of the brain, the amygdala. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't give you a slide on this, but there
Okay.
is actually a fear center in the brain.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned, having to fight this and all that, and I was thinking, often, I mean, things still happen in my life. It'll be like,
Right.
oh, wait a minute, I'm not happy about that. And I'll sit down and I'll do the 20 minutes. And, this is what another person said to me. It's like, what was it anyway?
Yeah. Right. What was I worried about? Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
one of the things that happens is the amygdala this fear center in the brain. It's just a tiny, I'm looking at the tip of my finger here, a tiny little P-shaped thing that pumps out fear.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's useful. If you're about to be attacked or, be
Right.
hit by a bus or something, then fine, the fear shoots in. But anxiety is when that fear is there and there's no reason for it, or a small reason. And so what the transcending does is that it bathes the whole brain in coherence, and that fear center gets reset. And we
Hmm.
can't talk ourselves into resetting it. I think
Yeah.
if we could, we wouldn't have anybody coming into TM. We get people who have tried everything, and they've tried to talk themselves out of it, and it works for a little while. There's wonderful
Right.
self-help books and everything,
Right.
and then it comes back.
Right. And that's my experience, right? Like I find little paths, different stages of my life at different times when I'm going through different things. I find little pockets of relief from that.
Yeah,
Right. Little
absolutely.
pockets here and there. I find them and they'll last for a period of time, but it nothing, I mean, from what you're sound, what it sound, what it sounds like what you're describing is you're fixing the root of it, where a lot of the other stuff is fixing it more at the surface level, like what you can see. We're not getting down underneath there of what the true root cause is.
Perfect. Perfect. Can I quote you on that?
Yeah. Yes, you can. So let's go back. Let's go back to the book. So your book, End Anxiety: Proven Benefits of the Transcendental Meditation Program. So there's a lot of, again, as someone who doesn't know about this, and this is very fascinating to me, very interesting, and I think everybody listening is going to be like, okay, I want this book because I want to know how to do this, right? I want this.
Right.
I want to know what is this. It feels like to me like a missing link, like the missing piece that I've been searching for, and going all these other directions. But it sounds like what you're saying here is that missing link for a lot of us, where we're able to get to the root of that one thing that is sucking our life force out of us. So
Nice.
let's, I mean, I don't know how else to say it. That's my own experience. I'm not going to speak for everybody, but let's talk about the benefits of meditation and some of the research that's went into that, and what you've learned in your years of this, and all your writing, and in your experience, even with your students.
Yes.
I'm going to show some slides really quick here.
Okay.
We've got, so for those on the audio only, I'm going to have a link in the show notes here where we're going to be able to, we'll link to these slides that Jim and I are talking through. And if you're able to go back and watch the video, the slides will be helpful, but we'll also talk through them and explain what we're looking at as well. So Jim, let's talk about this first slide here, what this depicts with the brain.
Okay, and you described perfectly early in our conversation how when the anxiety is very strong, it just kind of sucks the life out of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what we're showing in this slide is that the prefrontal cortex, that frontal area of the brain, which is, and then it says underneath, that's where we do our attention, our planning, our organizing, our impulse control, moral reasoning, all these wonderful things that make us high performers. Under stress, they shut down. And we all know what that feels like.
Yeah.
It's like, don't bother me. Give me some popcorn. And
Yeah. Leave me alone. Like I feel paralyzed. Like I feel like I should be doing something, but I can't do it, and I'm just frozen in time.
That's the prefrontal cortex actually shuts down, and that's useful under stress when there's an immediate threat.
Right.
So a bus all of a sudden is coming right at you, and so that shuts down. So you don't think about, oh, what type of bus is this, and is it really coming?
Right.
You just
Right.
jump.
Right.
But the rest of the time, we don't need that. And what the TM does, and that's when resetting the amygdala, the fear center actually does that, is that gets shut down. So I don't know if you have this in slideshow mode, is it?
Let me go to slideshow. Sorry about that. Yes, here we go. Okay, here we are.
Okay. And then, so there it is. This shows it reset. And then if you move, click once or move forward once and show it as it get one more time, there it is shut down. And that's under stress. And what the TM does, so then go backwards a couple of slides. it resets it. So
Okay.
that 20-minute meditation that I was talking about,
Right.
where we can't remember what was wrong,
Right.
that's what's happened. 20 minutes, it's reset, it's in a sense like a tranquilizer, except a tranquilizer doesn't have this energizing aspect. But it's like, okay, the body's tranquilizers just went to work and I'm
Yeah.
chill. Yeah, bring it on. I have a favorite story, a realtor friend of mine who was an incredibly dynamic realtor. She and her husband, they owned a huge, like a state park
Mm-hmm.
in Southern California, Temecula area. And she was to go into a meeting at 6 o'clock at night, and she had reached that shutdown point.
Yeah.
And she was like scary. She was like, everybody just leave me alone. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
She meditated and she said it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to that meeting. She just owned it. So that's that's the advantage it gives us.
Yes, and I mean, the benefit here, like that I can see too, is that often when again, from my experience, when I'm in this state, I'm trying to think my way out of it. I'm trying to think
Yeah,
harder or think a
right.
different solution or, and so not only am I being zapped of my energy by feeling all that anxiety, I'm being zapped from my energy of trying to add another layer of thinking on top of that for something that I really, from what you're showing here, I can't really think my way out of it. The thinking isn't helpful. It actually feels harmful more than anything at that point.
Some of the thoughts help, but some of the other ones don't. And the thing is that we're kind of vibrating at a stressed level.
Right.
And so that vibe, and we're not really stopping that vibration. So it's like, oh, here's a comforting thought. I have a check coming tomorrow. Or here's a comforting thought. I'm going to see my children or my spouse or whatever. Very comforting. And then the vibrating goes on.
Right. Right.
I was just thinking about Mike Love, of the Beach Boys, who wrote an introduction to this book,
Mm-hmm.
Good Vibrations, because
Yeah.
that's what we're doing, is
Yeah.
we're actually finding those good vibrations. And by the way, I have a podcast from him with him, much like you and I are doing right now. So
Oh, awesome.
it's on my website.
Yes. And
And go ahead.
we'll link to all that in the show notes so the listeners can find it easily.
When I just did an interview with him, and then he left himself. It was about 40 minutes before his show, and he said, "Okay, I have to go." Why? Because he meditates before the show.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's go on. I want to go on to some of these other slides because this data is so interesting, but also it this what we're talking about is real, right? There's data to back this up. This is real. There's real changes in
Exactly.
people's lives as a result of this. So, do you want to talk through this slide here?
Well, this one, this increased physiological relaxation. And so, what it shows very simply is that our breathing rate during the TM slows down tremendously. It even stops for a while because
Mm-hmm.
it's just pure osmosis going on. We're breathing at the finest level. And then perspiration decreases, because we perspire when we're nervous. And during the TM, we just calm down. And then this plasma lactate is that certain chemicals associated with stress. And we have another slide showing cortisol, which is now the most famous of the stress. Here we go. During the TM, that cortisol level goes down. They
Mm-hmm.
actually can just measure it in the saliva, and they measure it before and after we meditate. And it's like, oh my goodness, the stress hormone is down. So the degree of rest, and I just taught somebody last week. She's a social worker, and she said, I can't sit still. I just can't. I'm not a person who can sit still. And then she learned the TM and she said, well, I can sit still for 20 minutes doing this.
Right. Right.
And by the way, you don't have to sit totally still. It's not like one of those Zen meditations you've seen on TV. You can move this and that, but people actually feel just calm and quiet and they can sit still. In fact, they want to.
Yeah. And especially, I've been in yoga classes or even talked to people who try to do things that are more slower paced, from it could, like I said, it could be yoga or it could be even like just a simple stretching class. And it was always surprising to me the amount of people that would say they couldn't sit still long enough to stretch. And I was in my mind, I'm like, well, don't you want to feel good afterwards? And I think if you haven't experienced the benefits afterwards, like I was saying at the beginning about TM that I've never experienced, you don't understand or you can't know the benefits until you know it, right? You have to at least allow yourself the experience to learn how to do it, to know it, to understand what you're going to get out of it. And I think
Perfect.
that's so important when, especially thinking about if someone is interested in trying this or doing this, those thoughts can come in of how, oh, I'm not going to be able to sit still, or, oh, I'm not, I can't, I won't do this right. Right. And we don't even allow ourselves the chance to try something new. And we let the voice talk ourselves out of it.
No, exactly. No, I'll see people just at random, like in the airport or something. It's like everybody has coffee jitters,
Yeah.
so they're sitting quietly, only their leg keeps jumping and
Yes. Yes.
pulling their hair.
Yes.
And I want to go over and whisper a mantra to them,
Right.
It's like, because
Right.
it's not that way anymore, and even, we take the coffee so that we can focus better. And people tell me now they don't even need that afternoon coffee break anymore. They
Yeah.
just are refreshed and calm and clear.
And ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have one more slide here. This one, let's talk about this one really quick.
Okay, so this is the benefits of coherent brain functioning. And then over on the right side, there are various studies related to stress, so decreased neuroticism, everybody knows what that is, decreased state anxiety. So all those things calm down, they get better. And then as you get up near the top, improved concept learning ability. I taught one guy, he was a veteran who went back to college. He was in his 40s. And all of a sudden he's in with all these eager college students. And once he learned the TM, he said, I could understand the concept so beautifully. Gave him a huge advantage. And so then there's that. A little bit further over, there's the increased creativity. And it's because we think of calming down. I taught a medical doctor just 2 months ago, and he said, I was expecting more just the sedative effect. But we get the sedative effect, but we also wake up to this inner reservoir. And your website is so much about change. And the thing is, we don't become static. That's not a static field inside. It's actually a rising wave of creativity. So when we tune into that, both things happen. We become calm and we become more creative.
Right.
Now, there's a little bit more here. We have integration, improved neurological efficiency. Mind-body coordination improves. I taught a tennis coach, tennis pro, and he said that he always told people the right way to serve. Once he learned the TM, he could actually do it.
Right.
So there's the mind-body coordination. And the last one is who are you? Sense of self. Really, I taught a wonderfully successful fellow who managed the money of famous, successful people. And he said, you know what? I don't even really know who I am. I have a lot of money. And he wasn't one of those people. But with the TM, it's self-realization, something often spoken about. Capital S self. We become who we are.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. And on the outside, it doesn't matter if people tell us that. Like, people think of me as a yoga teacher, and the basic cliche, and blessings to all yoga teachers, but that's kind of teaching body postures and certain things. And there's a category, whereas what I'm teaching is this transcending. It's not that. But if people look at me that way, I don't depend on what they think of me.
Right.
I know.
Right. And this, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second so we can go back to the video here of us. So everything we've talked about today with this and your experience with TM, what it's done in your life, how does it feel to look back on the journey now through all of this, through the books, through the teaching, through the people you've met, the places you've traveled? How does that feel now?
I don't want to sound religion, but thank you, God. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for this, and to actually realize it's one thing to realize your dreams. I don't even know, but I didn't know really what my dreams were. When I was in high
Yeah.
school, I was going to become a businessman like my dad. And and I wasn't money motivated really, but what was I going to be? So
Right.
thanks to this, I found my path of what I wanted to do. Or some things I didn't especially, don't misunderstand me. I don't especially want to teach TM.
Right.
It takes a lot of time, and some people are difficult, and
Sure. Yes.
and all that time I'm not writing, which I most prefer. But as I look back at the blessings in a wonderful 54-year marriage with my wife,
Mm-hmm.
who's also this incredible teacher of transcendental meditation, and we go out as a team and we travel the world, and I do things I never dreamed of doing. I didn't dream that I would be in Nepal teaching basketball to these soldiers
Mm-hmm.
and also teaching TM there. So, and, publishing one book, even publishing one book, it actually took me 13 years before I published one, and is an amazing, amazing achievement. And to have done, basically lost count.
Yeah.
And the best thing is knowing how to do it. I can just sit down and basically have the essence of a book 3-4 weeks.
And have it. And it's so interesting to me to hear you talk about your experience, because it's and again, not having any experience with TM, and I purposefully did not dig deep into it because I wanted to go into it in this interview with you. It seems like TM opened up this space in your life, within your experience in this world. And it seems like there was also the other side of that with change, like we talked about, where that you welcomed the change, maybe, instead of resisting it or feeling like change. Like I used to have this feeling that if something changed, I was doing something wrong. And I don't know why I had that belief. It's like the opposite of what's true. But it sounds like from your story that TM opened up space for you, and you said yes to all the change that came your way. And
Beautiful. So, and not always willingly. I mean, I
yeah.
might do another book. I already have it in draft form
Mm-hmm.
of the change that I went through from being an academic, a professor, a decorated Ph.D., to being a basically down in the dirt writer collecting rejection slips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That was not, I was kicked into that really by nature. It's something I think, it's my calling. I'm a natural writer. My grandmother, wrote funny things for the Clyde, New York newspaper. and,
Mm-hmm.
I have two sisters who are professional writers, but I wasn't there. And so the thing about it is that, yes, I said yes to it, but only because I couldn't get around it.
Yeah.
The TM kind of creates that condition where out of necessity, we end up doing what we really love. And
Yeah.
I was thinking there's an instance where I didn't say yes fast enough. And
Uh-huh.
because I didn't, I began to say it more quickly. So I was waiting. Maharshi Mahesh Yogi is this enlightened guru.
Mm-hmm.
And people would wait in line for hours, days, just to get to ask him a question. And I was doing that, and I had a choice between coming back to teach, because I was on teacher training with him, coming back to the States, I had a teaching job, or I was working on his staff. And so I said to him, finally I got to him, days, and he said, I think should travel with me. And I didn't instantly do that.
Mm-hmm.
My wife was in medical school. I had the whole conventional path, and then I kept trying to make up for it, and I was offering
Yeah.
to work with him, but I can't take credit for always doing it and always, but I do have that intention whenever these things come up. Somebody said to me they were offering me this teaching position, I think in
Mm-hmm.
Jamaica,
Yeah.
and they said the time to take the cookie is when the cookies are being passed. And,
Right.
and these opportunities will leave. So Nina and I are often reminding each other of that. It's like, wait a minute, this is being offered. Like right now, she's being offered a teaching position in Thailand for 6 weeks.
Uh-huh.
And we've done it before now, but we're like, well, let's do it. Because
Right.
it's only there those 6 weeks.
Right. And I think that what you're talking about as your experience was, and I've learned this in my own life, that once you say the first yes, and you're willing to do that, then the other yeses come easy. It's
Perfect.
getting
Yeah.
yourself to that first yes that's
Yeah.
then like, okay, I can do this, right? This is possible for me. And then the others seem to come a lot easier.
Yeah, there's a momentum to it, or it's like,
Yeah.
sliding downhill. It's like an inertia, maybe. We get started, and then it's more and more, And
Yeah.
I told you my
Yeah.
life now is that basically my wife and I are nomads,
Right.
but we're, we're not homeless nomads, but we keep getting offers, come here and teach TM. And we go to beautiful places. Right now, I'm sitting in the Poconos in Pennsylvania, just absolutely on a mountaintop. It's beautiful. But yeah, so now it's easier. You're right, because, and
Yeah.
the same with Thailand. It was a huge, huge stretch the first time, but now it's like, yeah, sure, we'll
Yeah.
go to
No big deal,
Thailand.
right?
Yeah.
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 So after all the books, after all the teaching and going through this latest book that you wrote, did you learn anything new about yourself during this, or even maybe about anything that came out through the book that surprised you?
The amazing thing that's been happening isn't so much the process of writing. I love it when there's a surprise in that. But what's happened is that the non-meditating world has risen up in support of
Hmm.
this book.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are an example. The My publisher he doesn't do transcendental meditation, and nor does his staff. And they have all risen up in support of this. And then the first thing he insisted on, really forced me to do, so here we have nature forcing us to do things, is get transcendental meditation movement approval for the
Mm-hmm.
book.
Mm-hmm.
And it was even a surprise for me. I mean, that's the most difficult thing, because the movement is incredibly conscientious about the purity of the teaching. We only
Right.
teach this way. You can't read this in a newspaper. You can't have your friend teach it to you. You have to learn it not just from me, but from any certified transcendental meditation teacher. Well, they're so careful that then here I am. I love the relative. That is, I love in new things, fresh things. I love to be creative. They watch me very closely when I write something.
Mm.
If I have succeeded in having a foot in both worlds, that is the formal requirements of transcendental meditation, the movement, and also what people love to read and what's funny and fun and different, and you never know what's coming next, which is also in my book. If I can do that, but that was the hardest thing, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a word, just not getting thrown out of the movement.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the book, how people can find out about it when it's coming out, how they can find out more about you. And even if somebody wants to get started with TM, how would they go about it?
Okay, beautiful. So the book has been through this elaborate production process. It's now at the printers. And so the formal release date is October 18th.
Mm-hmm.
And probably already, I didn't check, but you can probably order it already, even on Amazon. But it's on Amazon, it'll be in bookstores. And so all of your usual ways of getting it. Now, the Transcendental Meditation, and I have a website, jamesgmeade.com. And Meade is Meade with an E on the end. And so there you can also read some sample chapters and see if you like me. And so now the Transcendental Meditation has a website, tm.org.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's an established organization throughout the country and throughout the world. And so go to tm.org, and then it says find a teacher, click on that. And then there's a central office that'll always connect you up with a teacher. And then there is this thing that we have to learn it from a teacher. Why is that? And so I told you my publishers are not meditators, and they wanted to have a chapter that says you don't have to learn this, or you can learn this from a book.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, you can't.
Right.
You can't. You can't teach it to yourself. And what is it? It's this experience of falling asleep in body and becoming a living soul. You don't get that.
Mm-hmm.
Just I tried it. I read that first. I wasn't a meditator. I read that in college, and I'm like, is this it? Is this it? Am I there?
Right. Right.
So tm.org, jamesgmeade.com, and the title of the book is End Anxiety with an exclamation point, and then Proven Benefits of the Transcendental Meditation Program.
Well, I love it. And I'm going to put all the links in the show notes for the listeners so they can easily find that. So we're coming at the end of our time. Unfortunately, this is such an interesting topic and I would love to continue it. But before we close out today, what do you hope readers take away or learn after reading your book?
You know, it's simple. It's a little nutshell. Learn TM, really.
Yeah.
You know, that's it. But the other thing is this angle, you know, because people so much think it's just going to be like pacifying.
Yeah.
And begin to take on the big challenges, begin to do the big things. You know, tell me about it after you do it, because that's the other thing, and maybe the surprising thing. You know, when we teach children, we'll say, do you want to grow up to be great? And I've watched children do this now who do transcendental meditation. So that's what I say to the readers. Yes, do TM, and please go out and be great.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. Thank you, Jim. It's been such an amazing conversation. My guest today has been Jim Meade, author of the book, End Anxiety, Proven Benefits of the Transcendental Meditation Program. So thank you again for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a delight.
You've been listening to the Create What You Speak podcast, brought to you by webtalkradio.net. You can also hear the podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and your favorite podcasting platform. I'm Sloan Fremont, and I hope you'll join me for the next episode of the Create What You Speak podcast, where we will continue to free our minds, expand our consciousness, and untangle those thoughts and patterns that keep us from living the life we desire. Check out my website, sloanfremont.com, to learn more.